All right, so now we're going to ink our background, and what I want to make sure is that I don't get any of this ink on the backs of my die cut pieces that I just did. It's going to look a little bit odd if I get some ink on there. So got that down. I need to make a little mask for my moon, and the way I'm going to do that is use a little scrap piece of paper, a little round punch, and I'm going to ink through that. I'm going to put it right there. And ink it as much or as little as you want. I like to make sure that there's some parts that are dark and some parts that are light. I think that just looks prettier and a little bit more realistic. The piece that you punched out, put some removable adhesive. If you don't have some like tape runner that has removable adhesive, Tombow Multi, if you stick it to the back of your whatever you want to use as a mask and let it completely dry, it dries as a Post-it note. So you can use that as a mask, and it's super handy. The only thing is you have to wait for it to dry. If you don't wait for it to dry, you're going to be gluing it permanently. So first thing I'm going to do, and this is very similar to the star in the first card. Okay, one second, gotta make sure that's stuck down nice. I'm going to, and my mask wants to move today. There, all right. It's wanting to move, so you might want to need it, or might need a new mask each time. So I'm just going to go around. And yes, that first swipe around did not look pretty. It's very streaky, but we will be fixing that as we're adding more. And just like the first card, I'm not too worried if there are some parts that are dark and some parts that are light. I think that looks a little bit more natural that way. But you can see how I got, when the mask shifted, I got some blue right on the moon there. If you have a clean mask that's just freshly done, you're not going to get that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my Santa on this one so that it goes over the just goes over the moon, just to hide that a little bit. So I'm not going to ink this down, this bottom part. It's covered by the die cuts, and that gives people a place to put a sentiment or to write a little note or whatnot. You could also do it on the back if you wanted to ink this entire piece and then do that on the back of it, back of the card. You absolutely could. All right, I like that. So now I'm going to get my darkest color and just go around the edges and deepen that. And when choosing a cardstock for your base, you want to make sure that you choose a thicker cardstock, a heavier cardstock, not something that's really light, because it's this one piece here is just a single sheet of cardstock and you want it to be able to hold up on its own. So, and if you choose a cardstock that's too light for that, it is it's going to be a little bit too floppy. So now I have a Santa and sleigh and reindeer stamp here. I'm going to stamp that with some permanent ink. And this is where I'm going to do it right over the moon just to hide the imperfections a little bit. It's called creative problem solving. So the very last step is I'm going to add some stickles to the front here. Now, if I go and fold this card up and then add stickles, I can't, any that are behind the buildings and stuff like that is going to make them stick, because stickles is glitter glue and it's just going to glue in place. So here's the solution for that once I get this tape off. And you want to make sure that when you're doing this taping, you're doing it with removable tape, because you don't want to be ripping your cardstock as you're lifting it up. All right, I'm just going to clean my surface so I don't have any ink down there. So if I flip it over, now I have a clean area to work on. So I'm just doing a little bit of stickles. Like I said, stickles is glitter glue, but it has a really nice fine tip to it. So it's a great way to add sparkle to something and be able to be precise with it. So I'm only doing it to the rooftops. I'm not doing it to the entire thing, because it's one of those things that, in my opinion, less is more. First of all, if I were to put stickles on the entire front, it would take a long time to dry. The other thing is, it would probably, because of all the liquid from the glue, it would probably start to warp the cardstock, and then I'd have a warpy die cut front. So on the houses, just the rooftops, and then I created like little subtle hills. And then on the trees, I'm just kind of doing scribbles, kind of ish looking like branches going down. I'm not being too precise because all of this is doing is just adding a little bit of shimmer. And then I'm gonna make a little bit of a hill here. All right, so now you're gonna need to wait for that to completely dry. But once it's dry, there you go. Super cute. And by having a full piece of vellum here and just die cutting it, or just tracing and cutting it, you have a neater inside there. But it just makes this the moon pop, and they just kind of bounce off of each other. So there you go. We'll see you in the next video.